Mahalo and hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm already laughing because I just read this top comment. Okay, this is a video about the Autobahn. Basically, should the US get an Autobahn type thing? Why don't we have an Autobahn in the US? The top comment said it's because US drivers don't know how lanes work. The fuck, guys? Damn. Germany has actual driving tests. It's not like the US where driver's licenses are handed out like candy. All right, let's see. CNBC, a small and up-and-coming YouTube channel. Check them out, link down below.
Audi.
Sorry, I'm gonna turn this up.
BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Porsche. These cars have made Germany famous for automotive engineering, and they are fast and powerful enough for these equally famous German roads.
And they also, they also look the best. Why is that? Why is that? I don't know why that is. Someone explain. Why do they look so good?
Which are unlike any other in the world. The Autobahn.
Like seriously, like Toyota, can we like figure out how to make a great? I mean, Toyota has a couple good-looking cars. Anyway, let's go. Let's move on.
A national highway system with no top speed limit.
Well, there's parts of it that have a top speed limit, but okay.
If you love cars, chances are driving the Autobahn as fast as you can is one of the things you want to do before you die.
It might be the way that you do die. Indeed, in fact.
Being able to actually...
I'm sorry, that's just like... I don't know. It sounds so incredibly reckless and stupid. Driving it as fast as you can. Just pedal to the metal. Just no regard. Hey, there's no speed limit. I'm going to go as fast as I can. My pedal is to the metal. I'm not taking it off. Let's see what happens. This is how I die. This is how I want to die, guys.
Put your vehicle to the test and really show its full potential is the ultimate.
Everything about the Autobahn owes a lot to Germany's unique and difficult history.
So there's this
That's one way to put it.
Bizarre Cold War moment when German lawmakers argue that being a free citizen, somebody who is not living in a totalitarian dictatorship, has to be able to drive as fast as they want.
What? That's the justification? That's actually so interesting. It actually, ironically, reminds me of the right to bear arms. You know, I forget which founding father said, you know, let them bear arms. You know, in a free society, if you trust your citizens, let them bear arms. It might have been Thomas Jefferson. Anyway, the Germans said, let them drive as fast as they can. They are free people. Let them drive as fast as they want.
Being a free citizen for a moment when German lawmakers argue that being a free citizen, somebody who is not living in a totalitarian dictatorship, has to be able to drive as fast as they want.
And I say it's ironic. The reason I say it's ironic is because, of course, in Germany, you have very tight gun control. So for that justification, that reasoning to be used is slightly ironic. Like, it's interesting how that same argument was used for totally different things.
So why doesn't the US or any other country in the world have an Autobahn? And is it really all it's cracked up to be?
A symbol of German supremacy.
First things first, what is the Autobahn? The full name is actually Bundesautobahn, which simply means federal highway.
So Bundes means federal. Now I know, because that's everywhere in Germany. That prefix, Bundes.
It is a more than 8,000-mile system of limited access freeways that run all throughout Germany. The word Autobahn is often just translated as motorway. In simple design terms, it's quite similar to freeways in the United States. Limited access means cars and trucks only. No pedestrians, no bicycles, no skateboards, nothing other than cars. There are designated entry and exit points and
traps.
no stoplights or intersections. The roots of the Autobahn go back all the way to the early 20th century, but really, the first big step in its growth happened under Adolf Hitler. There really was no need for it at all. Few Germans owned cars. Most took public transit, which was plenty fast and got people to where they needed to go. The Autobahn's real potential was as propaganda.
They wanted to build a sort of a futuristic mega project, something that would lend itself to, talking about the regime as a modern, forward-looking regime. At the same time, while it was, politically speaking, a very repressive, totalitarian dictatorship, right? It was
It's it's an interesting framing of it, in my opinion. Like, obviously Hitler's like the most evil dude ever, but the Autobahn, like, being like, oh, it was propaganda. Like, oh, okay, all right.
about symbolizing
Obviously, it serves quite a high amount of utility.
power, the conquest of space.
By the end of World War II, there were less than 4,000 kilometers built, about 2,500 miles. It was really from the 1960s
Did a lot of it get destroyed, I assume, in the war?
through the 80s that the Autobahn system we know today was properly developed.
This was obviously a time when the Federal Republic became sort of an affluent Western liberal democracy and also much more of a consumer society. So people actually began to own cars in much higher numbers.
The post-World War II era is also when the Autobahn gained its most famous trait:
So was it only in Western Germany at first, I assume?
long stretches with no speed limits. During the Nazi era, the speed limits were mainly to conserve fuel for the war effort.
The birth of a new free nation for Germany.
Once West Germany became independent and separate from the Communist East in 1949, it kept the Nazi-era speed limits for a few years. But then,
In a really astonishing move, the Federal Parliament in 1952 decides to abolish all speed limits. Not
That is really interesting. I feel like usually things don't work that way. Like, once you add a speed limit, something for security and safety, it's hard to repeal that. So for the government just to say, let's just repeal all the speed limits. Yeah, what's the worst that could happen? It's actually kind of like impressive in a way,
not just on the Autobahn, but on any kind of highway and in urban areas as well. And you can imagine the results, especially
Everywhere?
in cities, right? With cars
What?
going as fast as they want.
crashes, injuries, and fatalities all rose until the government started
Oh, yeah?
reinstating limits on roads. It mostly left the Autobahn alone. Mostly. Today, speed is regulated on about 40% of the motorways. Some limits are fixed, others are dynamic, changing according to conditions.
That's really cool.
On the rest of the freeway, the
Very smart.
recommended speed limit is about 80 miles per hour. That means if you get into a crash at a speed above that,
That's still fast.
you can be held liable for the accident.
I mean, that's like faster than any speed limit here in America that I know of. Usually the top speed is about 70 on like an interstate highway.
My parents commute regularly from Nuremberg to Munich, and my mom will drive 100 miles an hour, and it's not a big deal.
It's not that unusual to just travel somewhere at
I've never drove 100.
200 kilometers an hour, which is around 125 miles an hour. But all things considered, on average, I would say it's probably best to imagine Autobahn traffic somewhat like driving through Texas, maybe, or through Kansas. People don't drive slow. It's quite fast all the way around, but it's not recklessly fast. It's not race car fast.
Okay, even though you just said people are driving 125 miles per hour. The thing is, there's like way less fatal car accidents and probably car accidents in general in Germany than America. That's the amazing thing.
German race car driver Rudolf Caracciola is still believed to hold the record for the fastest speed ever recorded on the Autobahn, 268.8 miles per hour.
And I mean, like those comments, honestly, they frame it more so like America's too dumb or whatever, like the people suck at driving. I would actually flip it the other way around in a more, maybe a more positive way and say that Germans are kind of like uniquely qualified to be allowed to drive this fast. I think most countries should not have the Autobahn, but Germans have a unique culture, being very, particular about the road rules and following them. And, so it makes sense.
But others have come quite close, such as a Bugatti Chiron that hit 257 in 2021.
So I have driven
400.
a BMW B7. It's an Alpina 600 horsepower sedan. I drove that 170 on the Autobahn. That's the fastest I've driven.
I don't even know if he means kilometer or mile per hour.
It was difficult to do, by the way.
I'd rather not talk about the fastest I went, even
I guess he's talking about mile per hour, which is insane.
though it's legal to do so. Let's just say I once went 4 towns away from us by accident. I didn't want to go that far, but I was just going a little too quickly.
German automakers don't necessarily make their cars specifically for the Autobahn, but the demands of high-speed environments like these highways do influence their engineering decisions and marketing. Mercedes refers to their cars as Autobahn proven.
Driving at high speed is not a video game. It should be relaxed cruising. Yeah? And the big challenge for us is controlling the energy in the car, which increases with the square of speed. And that becomes very important at speeds over about,
What he said.
I would say, 60 miles per hour.
It starts with aerodynamic designs, but axles, suspension systems, springs, dampers, roll bars, the tires, the braking systems are all tuned to perform at this level.
We tune the vehicle safety, the comfort, and agility.
Does that mean it's like a little bit overqualified for American roads?
Yes, to deliver a typical Mercedes-Benz driving character at high speeds.
Mercedes even has an onboard system designed to keep the car on course when it is hit from the side by a strong gust of wind.
Even with startling events like, for example, powerful wind gusts. So our aim is to keep the car stable and safely on course at high speed without permanent steering corrections, while damping out bothersome chassis motions. And the car will always support the driver by being tolerant of mistakes.
To understand why Germany is basically the only country in the world
right.
with a mostly unregulated highway like this, it is probably best to look at what makes Germany's driving laws and car culture so different from, say, the supposedly freedom-loving United States. First of all, it's a lot
We love freedom. We're safer off just giving everyone guns than letting everyone drive 140 miles per hour.
harder to drive a car in general in Germany. You can't get a license in the country until the age of 18.
Wow. 18. I bet you they're going to change it here in America to eventually to be 18. That's my guess. But for right now, I mean, people start learning at 15. Last I checked, you get a permit where you can drive with someone with a license for practice, and then by like 16 and a half, you can take your test for your license.
In the U.S., the law
Like a lot of high school kids are driving to school. Like by the time you're a junior or a senior in high school, the majority of students are driving to school themselves. Whereas I was always on the bus.
varies, but in most states, people can obtain learner's permits at 15 and receive licenses allowing them to
Because I didn't have a freaking car at 16 years old.
drive legally under at least some conditions by the age of 16. It is also far more expensive and challenging to obtain a license. Many hours of instruction are required and the tests are demanding.
It's much more difficult, it's more expensive. A lot of people fail their driving tests, myself included.
Fees for a license and all of the associated instruction in Germany can run 2,500 to 3,500 euros when you add up the costs. The fee for a driver's
That's insane.
license in the state of California is $45, but that state, as is common in the US, requires driver education class.
It's kind of like here in America, since car culture is so prominent and pervasive, it's almost like driving is more of a right than a privilege, which is not good for, as far as keeping the roads safe, because you want only qualified people to be driving, but you kind of need, like, everybody basically needs a driver's license, for the most part. Unless you live right in the middle of the heart of certain cities, you basically need a license. So, therefore, you kind of need to make the test easy enough for all the idiots to pass it.
As well. Then, the certification process for your car in the country is also extremely stringent.
I had to get my 500 euro minivan through it. It was not easy. And that sort of makes the Autobahn feel.
Did he just say he has a 500 euro minivan? Did I just hear that correctly?
This for your car in the country is also extremely stringent.
I had to get my 500 euro minivan through it. It was not easy. And
how's that even? Whatever. Okay. Interesting. 500 euro minivan.
That sort of makes the Autobahn feel safer. You know you're surrounded by cars that have been rigorously checked. A lot of cars here in the States, especially in the Rust Belt, would probably not be fit for the Autobahn.
Having such barriers
for sure. For sure.
In the US,
you're basically allowed to drive anything here in America if it has like turn signals and mirrors. You could basically buy it. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. Which, I mean, that was good. Well, it wasn't safe for me, but back when I drove a total junker car, it was, I mean, I don't know. It wasn't safe. My tires were totally bald, and probably a million other things would fail the TÜV. But, yeah, at least I was allowed to drive it.
This would really limit the number of people and cars who can
I was able to get to where I needed to college.
Drive in a country that is right now far more car dependent than Germany is. Americans drive about twice as much as Germans.
Wow.
Germany is a much more urbanized country. There's lots of people who live in major cities who don't even have a driver's license. They get around using public transit and use rail.
Then there is the cost of this. A lot of engineering goes into keeping these motorways drivable at these speeds.
Look at that.
The pavement is extremely smooth and is more or less constantly maintained. That's expensive. The German government spends 5 times more on the Autobahn than it does on its other federal highways.
If you look at the average...
What? I thought they were going to say 5 times more per kilometer compared to America. I don't even know what that means. 5 times more than its other federal highway. Okay, it's kind of useless stat. I'm not gonna lie. Like, that's not comparing apples to apples.
Maintained. That's expensive. The German government spends 5 times more on the Autobahn than it does on its other federal highways.
Because you at least need to say how many kilometers these highways are compared to the Autobahn.
If you look at the average American freeway or interstate, you will usually just find concrete surfaces. And in Germany, it's way more intricate than that. You can drive through the pouring rain on modern strips of Autobahn that were recently redone, and you don't have any spray whatsoever. You can travel at very high speeds
What?
through the pouring rain, and that is no issue at all.
Really? You can drive at high speeds. It's no issue at all? Somehow it just seems physically like a little bit questionable to me. Like, okay, I understand they probably perform a lot better than the ones in America, but to say it's no issue at all, surely it affects the grip of your tire to some extent. Not at all.
Though the US population is far larger than Germany's, building up a highway system that could realistically handle such high speeds would require much investment. And US infrastructure suffers both criticism and financial insecurity.
Yeah, we have a military to fund, unfortunately. We don't have any money left over for any of this.
The thing is, Tracy says, Americans might not be missing as much as they think they are.
I have found that the reality is just, it's a little bit anticlimactic in a way. It's just not quite what you want it to be.
Just because there is no speed limit doesn't mean you will always be able to drive fast. Across Germany, there were about 516,000 traffic jams in a single year. And the number of hours Germans spend in traffic has been rising. Several
On the Autobahn or everywhere in Germany?
highways had traffic jams that were longer than 40 miles.
It's under construction a lot. It makes sense. If you have an unrestricted highway, it has to be perfect. You can't have a deep pothole like in Detroit where I used to live. If you had one of those potholes on the Autobahn, you'd see cars getting air.
Germany's Autobahns are also
I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit of a contradiction. You know? On one hand, he's saying, oh, it's always under construction, so you can't drive that fast. But then he says it's so immaculate that there's no imperfection, because if there was, a car would get air. Well, the only way it gets air is if it's going fast. So which is it? Sorry.
major thoroughfares for international commerce.
Germany is kind of right smack dab in the center there of Europe. It's sort of this connector between East and West, even North and South. So you see a lot of commerce. A lot of trucks are traveling on that Autobahn, and they are not fast.
If you come to Germany and expect a large and vast countryside and you can go wherever as fast as you like, then you might get disappointed because it's quite crowded and we have large cities.
The absence of speed limits on German motorways divides even.
It is interesting how, like in America, there's such vast amounts of land. You can just drive. You can drive on the interstate and be alone, especially like in the middle of the night. You can just be alone out there for miles and miles. I like that. I like that. I don't often find myself in that situation, but when I do, it's quite nice. I like being alone out there. But, you know, in Germany, you have this unlimited speed limit, you know, Autobahn, and yet there's so many people. It's a much more tightly, densely populated country.
In German opinion, polls have shown that a slight majority of Germans favor introducing a hard limit on the Autobahn for safety reasons.
That surprised me. I learned that a while ago.
And to help the country hit environmental goals. Speed does worsen the severity.
And once again, it almost kind of goes back to like what I said about the Second Amendment here in America. It's like when the politicians back, 70 years ago said, let's have no speed limits. The cars probably didn't go that fast. Kind of like how guns, when America was founded, you had the freaking musket. Now you have like, it's like, okay, maybe now it's, it's not the same spirit of the original intent isn't there anymore. Maybe we do need speed limits now that the cars can go 400 kilometers per hour. And maybe in America we need some gun control since the guns can fire 30 bullets a second. Honestly, the full auto guns are actually highly regulated here in America, but I digress. You can fire, semi-automatic, very fast.
Safety reasons and to help the country hit environmental goals. Speed does worsen the severity of crashes and raises the risks of injuries and deaths. That said, most of Germany's vehicle fatalities happen on rural roads, followed by urban ones.
Oh, interesting.
The share of motorway fatalities is also smaller than those in some other OECD countries, such as Slovenia, Luxembourg, and Belgium.
That's quite fascinating.
I guess there's studies supporting each side of that argument, but...
Was America on this list, or is this just Europe? There's New Zealand. Is America here? Where's America? How could they forget America? There's no America, damn it.
And Belgium.
I guess there's studies supporting each side of that argument, but, the numbers don't lie. You don't have much differences in fuel consumption, for example. It just doesn't make a whole lot of difference to drive 130 kilometers per hour or keep it open. And you also have to consider the fact that we don't always travel at full speed all the time.
There are also strict rules. The left lane is for passing.
What? It is in America as well. Some people don't seem to understand that.
Like highways in many other countries, you cannot pass on the right if someone is behind.
Now that's different. Here in America, you can pass on the right, even though it's obviously dangerous.
Behind you in the left lane, you have to move over. Tailgating is a serious offense that comes with heavy fines.
It's also for everybody a high responsibility. So that's why we are not allowed to pass on the right lane. You have to also adapt your speed.
Statistically speaking, Autobahns are safer than other roads, but that mostly has to do with the fact that there's only cars and only trucks. I mean, there are people who...
So they're safer than other roads, but they would be even safer with speed limits. Of course, they'd be safer with speed limits. You know what I mean? Like, you could honestly say that about anything. You know, if you lower, if you lower all speed limits to 40 mile per hour or whatever that would be in kilometer, then that would prevent like 98% of all fatal accidents, assuming people actually followed that speed limit. But, you know, if they did... What I'm saying is going slower is, of course, safer. Yes, of course.
who literally are afraid to drive on the Autobahn because of the lack of a speed limit.
In like manner, the data on how much introducing a speed limit would reduce carbon pollution has met with skepticism, though some recent numbers suggest it might be more than previously believed.
Anybody who owns an electric car will tell you, when they go fast on the highway, their range plummets. The BMW i3, which was developed right there in Munich. And that car, I can drive it in the city.
That actually is a little bit ironic, I guess, you know, because you have so much car manufacturing in Germany, and now they're trying to pivot to electric cars, but, you know, they're not as efficient on their own Autobahn, just because of the way electric motors work, unfortunately.
And I'll go 180 miles in the city on a charge, but on the freeway, I'll do 115.
So, in many ways, Americans envious of these German speedways might be missing out on a bit of fun, but it might also be true they are envious of something that is more myth than reality.
I think a lot of Americans probably would travel to Germany, they'd get a fast car, and they'd say, woo-hoo-hoo, let's do it. And then they'd be stuck behind a truck in traffic, and they'd be like, what the heck's going on? It is...
Okay. All right. I mean, I've seen plenty of videos to say the exact opposite. And even in this video, they said themselves, you know, he said, I went past 4 cities by accident because I was going so fast. So I don't really understand that notion. Like, oh, it's just traffic. Like, it's clearly not. But I also do understand, of course, there is a lot of traffic. Okay, yeah, sure.
Not a racetrack, but every now and then, the right stretch of the Autobahn and the right time of day and the right car, you can reach automotive nirvana.
Okay. I feel like that was just an attempt to be like, you know, we're the news, so we're going to say, you know, it's good, but it's also bad. Overall, that was very interesting. Check out CNBC, link down below. Small and up-and-coming YouTube channel, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.